Hi guys! Today we're going to talk about the Indian Ocean trade routes, the second of 3 trade routes discussed in Chapter 8. We're going to contextualize the rise of the Indian Ocean trade within the post-classical empire. The Indian Ocean was the world's largest sea-based system of communication and exchange until the 1500s, stretching from southern China to eastern Asia. The transportation costs were lower on the sea roads than on the Silk Roads because ships could accommodate larger and heavier cargoes than camels, horses, or oxen could on the Silk Road. Additionally, the monsoons, with their alternative wind currents that blew predictably eastward during the summer months and westward during the winter, made seaborne trade possible and reliable. Indian Ocean commerce dates back to the first time of the first civilizations. Commerce increased in the era of the classical civilizations as mariners learned how to ride the monsoons. Indian Ocean trade operated across an archipelago of towns whose merchants had more in common with one another than with the people of their own hinterland. Compared to the Silk Road, merchants usually did not share common language and culture as the product went on the relay-like trade routes. As a result of maritime merchants spending up to 6 months waiting for the monsoons to take them back to their homelands, port cities became cosmos for cultural exchange and diversity. But the fulcrum of this growing commerce lay in India itself. Indian merchants were in touch with Southeast Asia by the 1st century Common Era. The post-classical world had political forces that promoted trade in the Indian Ocean. The economic and political revival of China after the Han Dynasty fell came under the Tang and Sung dynasties from 618 to 1279. These actively promoted trade and the rise of Islam in the 7th century Common Era. Its subsequent spread across much of Afro-Eurasia encouraged commerce within and beyond the creation of an Arab empire. One of the most famous Chinese merchants and explorers during this time was a Muslim who was a convert as a result of his time spent in India and in Southeast Asia. During the post-classical era, religion was spread more widely and rapidly than before, adding context to the Indian Ocean trade routes. As Muslim merchants left ports in Arabia, they took their traditions and cultures to other ports across the Indian Ocean, specifically to the states in Southeast Asia, where Confucian, Buddhist, Hindu, and Muslim practitioners as a result of their participation in Indian Ocean trade. Take the island of Malay as an example. The Malay kingdom of Srivijaya controlled the trade of point from 670 to 1025. Rulers imported Indian political ideas and Buddhist religious concepts. The Selendra kingdom of Central Java, an agriculturally rich region, mounted a massive building program between the 8th and 10th centuries, featuring Hindu temples and Buddhist monuments. The most famous, known as Borobudur, is the largest Buddhist monument in the world. Malay sailors opened an all-sea route between India and China through the Straits of Malacca around 350 Common Era. With the rise of Islam, commerce increased in the western portion of Indian Ocean. This made trade with Eastern Africa and Swahili coast easier between 1000 to 1500. Independent city-states could form along this Swahili coast. And these city-states would exchange goods from the African interior for products from distant civilizations. Language along the coast was grammatically Bantu, but written in Arabic script and contained a number of Arabic loan words combined with the Bantu words. Culture along the Swahili coast rapidly became Muslim, which still shows today in the countries of Sudan, South Sudan, Ethiopia. Understanding the rise of Islam in Africa, then, can only be understood within the context of the emergence and growth of Indian Ocean trade. Likewise, we can't discuss the spread of Islam without contextualizing it within the use of Indian Ocean trade and the Silk Roads. When the Tang dynasty fell to the Mongols during the 14th century, these trade routes, especially the Silk Road, were already in full swing and created a lot of wealth for the Khanates. Go to your notes and write down an example of contextualization for the Indian Ocean that we discussed in this lecture. And just like your notes for the Silk Roads, come up with your own example of context for the Indian Ocean. Your homework is to read the sea lanes section of your textbook. Again, keep the context in mind, especially now that you can contextualize the use of the Indian Ocean trade routes with the Silk Road and even the Mediterranean Sea. Thanks, guys.